I've got a hot take. Limited edition watches do more harm to the watch community than good. What should be a way for brands to experiment without worrying about mass appeal has gotten way out of control. And they're contributing to some of the worst issues in the industry right now: scarcity, unaffordability, and even lack of innovation. Because the problem is, limited editions aren't even rare anymore, and I've got the stats to prove it. Picture for a moment every watch reference released in an entire year. Of all of those, how many do you think are considered limited edition? I always assumed it was around 10, maybe 20%. It can't be that many. Would you believe me if I told you that nearly half of all new luxury watches are limited edition? Take this year's Watches and Wonders. I painstakingly documented every watch revealed at the event, nearly 300 new releases. And about a third were explicitly limited, and another 10% were likely to be limited or small production runs, which is basically the same thing. That leaves just over a half as true standard production models, and this isn't an outlier. I looked at an even broader dataset of over 900 of 2025's releases, courtesy of thewatchpages.com. Again, I went through every model individually and found limited editions made up around half of those as well. Brands such as Grand Seiko, for example, consistently announces more limited editions in a year than standard production, and Seiko isn't too far behind at 30 to 40% depending on the year. I believe a true distribution of around 40% of an entire year's references being limited is a fairly safe estimate overall, which to me is just ridiculous. At this point, limited isn't anything special anymore. It really just means harder to acquire. And that's just where the problem starts. When half of our options are essentially not possible to reasonably obtain, and many of the other half are restricted behind waitlists and production constraints, it's no wonder one of the biggest complaints in watches is that you simply can't get what you want. It dilutes collections too. Instead of refining a strong core lineup, brands flood their catalogs with dozens of short-run variations that contribute nothing to the collection long term. And the sad part is, beyond the slop releases that bloat the lineups, some of the best and most desirable designs get locked behind these limited runs for seemingly no reason. It's not like, say, Grand Seiko, for example, are producing a unique dial for each of these runs. No, the dies used for the textures are the same as the standard models, mass manufactured in the same way, only differing in color. So if many of these limited models are produced in the same way, why are they limited then? Because, at least in part, it's profitable. If you enjoy this sort of analytical content about watches, consider subscribing. I upload a new video every week on topics just like this. I really enjoy hearing from all of you and reading the comments spurred on from these discussions. The channel is growing fast, and it's been great watching this community build. Thanks. The most common complaint I see these days about watches is how expensive they're getting. Limited editions are directly contributing to this. Quite often, limited editions are priced higher at retail than their standard counterparts, which means about half of watch references are overpriced, even more when buying new. Typically, the best way your average person can combat this is by buying watches for a steep discount on the secondary market. Unfortunately, this is where it gets even worse for limited editions. They don't meaningfully depreciate on the gray market. It'll depend on different factors, but on average, you can expect limited runs to retain about 15 to 25% more of their value, if they even depreciate at all, because often they increase in price due to their scarcity. To some of you, this may sound like a good thing. How could good value retention be bad? Remember though, these are limited production watches. You're significantly more likely to be buying these on the secondary market in the first place, because of their short retail run and small batch size. It all comes down to the fact that restricting supply relative to high demand begets a higher price. And what are we actually getting in return? Sometimes it actually makes sense. Production limitations from rare materials, complexity, or craftsmanship. Most of the time though, the difference is really just a different colorway. Look through the catalogs of nearly every big brand. Omega, Grand Seiko, Zenith, etc. Nearly every single limited edition is a dial color or case material variation on a standard release model. It's become a crutch, a way to ignore a proper lack of variety and needed improvements to their core designs, in favor of the easy way out, slight variations and company collaboration models. And they can get away with it for the same reason Rolex can get away with their wait lists. Scarcity sells. The unfortunate reality is that consumers love a rare and exclusive product, and brands are simply taking advantage of that. Limited editions are a surefire way for a brand to guarantee a sellout of a model. And that's one of the strangest parts about them. They can be some of the best colors and designs a brand has to offer, or Sponsored collaboration stinkers that no one asked for. And regardless of which it is, buyers still lap it up because of that exclusivity. All of this has contributed even more to the toxic marketing tactics, many of which I discussed in my previous video. Artificial scarcity, false urgency, and a massive fear of missing out. Because if you don't buy it during the initial run, you will quite literally miss out. What motivation do brands have to improve their offerings when they can release new limited editions every few months to stay in the headlines, knowing it'll sell out right away? People complain about waitlists and artificial scarcity from brands like Rolex all the time, and rightfully so, but you never really hear the same about limited editions that are just a repackaged version of the same thing. In many cases, these small runs are really just talking points for a brand, a way to advertise. What else would you call an 8-watch limited run announcement at Watches and Wonders? In some cases, it gets even worse too. Small runs make market manipulation and unethical practices even easier for gray market resellers. When watches are difficult to get, those preferred by the ADs are often the ones who can secure access. And would you believe that they can then resell those pieces at a higher price? This extends to independents with limited production too, which are effectively limited editions. FP Journe, for example, exploded in price in the early 2020s. This was likely in large part due to their low production output of 800 watches per year being exploited by Watchbox, now the 1916 company, who cornered the market and artificially raised the price. In return, this created a feedback loop of supply and demand, which has now led to low 5-figure price Journes becoming mid 6-figure price ones. All this is to say, when a watch is limited in production, the only ones benefiting are the sellers, at your expense. From all of this discussion, you may think I hate limited editions, but that's actually not the case. At their core, they have a ton of benefits and the capacity to be quite productive to the industry. My issue is that this potential is being squandered in favor of making a quick buck. Limited editions are one of the last areas of watch manufacture that facilitates innovation. Without the requirement of commercial viability, brands can experiment, take risks, and develop new technologies that don't have the tooling or production capability for large batch runs. And while these experimental releases and movement novelties may be completely unachievable for the average person now, over time those innovations can trickle down into more accessible watches. Many small independent watchmakers are at the forefront of this movement, often only producing a few hundred or even dozen watches a year. Large-scale production is both non-viable and undesirable for their work. It would be silly of me to demand such. Their ability to even exist relies solely on producing small batch runs. Without this, the industry would be completely dominated by the huge conglomerates, with no possibility of competition for smaller watchmakers. And sometimes, limited runs are just genuinely justified. Using unique materials such as rare metals or stone dials, or complex movement production just isn't possible on a large scale. Niche designs for smaller audiences fall here too. That's what limited editions are supposed to be for. Perhaps the last bastion of true innovation in watchmaking is within the industry's microbrands. One of these brands I'd like to shine the spotlight on is Ming. Ming has a cohesive and striking design language throughout all of their watches. Minimalistic hands and indices, distinct case shapes, and beautiful dials. Today's obscure reference is a limited edition with all 3 of those qualities that actually warrants being limited. That's because the 5704 Iris chronograph is a destro, or left-handed, monopusher chronograph with an amazing dial. It's estimated that around 10% of the population are considered to be left-hand dominant, meaning that the commercial appeal of a left-handed watch is quite low. In this case, it makes sense as a limited run. On top of that, destro monopusher chronographs are exceedingly rare. I can only find 2 other examples across the entire industry. Panerai reference PAM 00579 and the Patek reference 5373P001, both of which are limited, and the latter of the 2 is over $500,000. This alone makes the Iris chronograph distinct, as it's certainly the most affordable watch of its kind, even if it's overpriced on the secondary market. But what makes this watch special goes far beyond its unique complication. It's all about that dial. The color is constantly changing from purple to blue to green, depending on the angle because of a multiphasic coating. The dial itself is grooved, and the indices are floating. And the lume, I don't consider myself to be much of a lume fan, and even I am astounded by it. This watch is downright mesmerizing, and it's really a shame that it was a limited edition, although I completely understand why. It perhaps was, and still is, overpriced for what you're actually getting. A modified Solita movement 30-minute chronograph, with decent specs on paper. That's not the intrigue though. What is the striking design language and frankly, innovative usage of colors. You're actually getting something unique in a sea of similarly styled watches. In many ways, being a watch enthusiast is a constant battle against disappointment. There's always some flaw in the specs or design of a watch, and brands take forever to listen to what people want. When they finally do release the perfect model, it's often limited edition and way overpriced as a result. And that's what limited editions are to me, a constant source of disappointment. Just about nothing kills my interest in an amazing watch faster than learning it's limited. I immediately know I should just forget about it and move on because of how difficult it'd be to get, and overpriced if I could. It shouldn't be this way though. They shouldn't be half of all releases, and the place for all of the best versions and colorways of a design to be. They should be the space where brands innovate the most, experiment, and create pieces they couldn't otherwise. Not restricting the best they have to offer for the sake of marketing tactics. How do all of you feel about limited editions? Do you think they're fine in the market as they are, or does there need to be a shift in the mindset surrounding them? And if you're interested in more of these market discussions and analysis, watch this video, where I explain why it's almost always the wrong decision to buy a watch new, and the situations where it does actually make sense, limited editions included. Thank you for taking the time to watch.